Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back into Strategies for Living here on 1017 FM and 710 Keel. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. There you are. You're just grinning like a Chessy cat
I'm just
from
so
the start.
proud to be here.
Yeah, you are. PLPC Carla McCormick. How you doing?
I'm great. I missed the rain, so it was really good.
Well, I was in a little bit. Suki and I were in a bit of the rain. It
Torrential downpour.
disturbed her more than it did me. Yeah. Did it disturb you, Reuben? Did you get your hair wet?
Oh no.
Okay.
I don't have any hair, and no, I didn't see any rain on the way here.
Our
I've been here for ages.
fabulous producer, he is keeping us flying high, low, and in between. The ace of the airwaves, Reuben Wright.
A good evening, everyone.
And I trust you've had a good day.
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Can't complain.
I've had a very good day because it's my middle daughter Desiree's birthday today.
Oh yeah.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday, Des.
Yeah,
Happy birthday.
Desiree McMillan Fertitta. It's the 16th anniversary of her 21st birthday.
Ah.
And in that honor, I'm going to tell a story. But first, let me say thank you for tuning in to Strategies for Living. And we have Gary Tiemann in the house with us this evening. He's coming back. I don't know if you remember, but the last time he was here, we started doing A Course in Miracles and the 12 Steps, and we got through 6 of the steps. And so we're coming back, and we're going to do the other 6 steps.
I was listening to that on the radio. I wasn't here when you guys started.
Oh, and then we'll catch you up.
I know.
So Strategies, thank you, folks, for tuning in. We're brought to you by CADA. The Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana, been helping individuals and families for 60 years now. We're also brought to you by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Resilient House. Okay, so are you ready for a Desiree story?
I'm ready.
All right, so Desiree's real proud of this. Frog walks in a bar. Walks in a bank. See, I'm already, I've got Desiree on my mind, so I've got the frog in the bar. But the frog walks into a bank and goes up to the teller, a lady by the name of Patty Whack, and says, I need a loan. And Patty says, well, why should we give you a loan? And the frog says, well, my father's Mick Jagger. And the lady's impressed, but she says, I'm still going to need some collateral. She says, do you have any collateral? The frog takes out a piggy bank, puts the piggy bank up on the counter, says, my dad gave me this. And so Patty says, I don't know. So she goes to get the bank manager, and he comes over, and she explains what's going on. He looks at the frog. He looks at the piggy bank, and he says to Patty, he says, what's your problem? And she said, well, it's a piggy bank, and I don't, really don't know if that's enough collateral for a loan. The manager says, it's a knick-knack, Patty Whack. Give the frog a loan. His old man's a Rolling Stone.
That's so bad. Sorry,
No.
Des.
We'll be back. If we're talking addiction prevention, Welcome back. Welcome back into 1017 FM, 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Let's welcome back to the program now Mr. Gary Tiemann, who received his MSW from Louisiana State University in 1987. I wore your colors.
I saw that.
In your honor
I was so
today.
pleased this evening.
He started his social work career as an intern on the mental health team at Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola. Went on to practice at various mental health hospitals and agencies as a case manager, staff therapist, and program administrator and clinical director. Now has a private practice in Shreveport, Louisiana for over 25 years and has authored a, still warm off the press, his own book. It's called Miraculous Psychotherapy, Achieve Your Ultimate Happiness with a Course in Miracles. Welcome back to Strategies.
Thank you so much, David. It's always fun to come back here and talk about some of the things I love to talk about.
And the last time you were here, about a month ago, we started talking about A Course in Miracles and the 12 steps of AA. And so we got through 6 steps, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
So our job today is to get through the other 6 steps. Now, I know that many of our listeners heard that program before, already know what A Course in Miracles is. We may have some new listeners tuning in.
We hope.
We hope so this evening. So very quickly, you have been a student, a teacher, a follower of A Course in Miracles for many years now.
Yes.
What is it?
It was a channeled work. Dr. Helen Schuckman and Dr. Bill Thedford, both psychology professors at Columbia University, had this interesting relationship, and they would bicker. They loved each other dearly. They were like brothers and sisters, but they would bicker. And
had a conflictual relationship at times.
Very tense.
Yeah.
And it compounded by they were working together, and he was her boss. But one day, one of them exclaimed, "There has to be a better way," after one of their disagreements.
Right.
And when that was said, Helen started hearing this voice, the voice of Jesus, that first of all said,
It told her, it's I'm the voice of Jesus.
Right.
This is Jesus.
And asked her if she was just blowing off steam or if she really wants to know. And when she said, "I think I really want to know," he
That'll
said,
get your
"Okay,
attention.
take notes." And she took notes, and it took notes for years. And it was him explaining what he really taught. And
when she went to Dr. Thetford with I think something's going on with me, and I don't know if it's, I don't know if I'm sane.
These people are well versed in psychosis and hallucinations.
And she explained to him what was going on. He said, "Slow down, take notes, and I'll help you."
Yes.
And he began to literally, she would go home in the evening and have these downloads and write them up. She knew shorthand.
Yes.
So she would take shorthand, and then at the office the next day, he would type them up on the typewriter.
They would have a routine of coming in an hour early before their real work started, and there he was on his IBM Selectric using carbon paper and doing triplicate of what he was typing of her dictation that she was sharing with him.
In a nutshell, would it be fair to say, Gary, that Jesus told Helen, "Look, the world is a lot of ego, and because of that, the religions practiced in my name have not gotten everything exactly kind of the way that I came and presented it." Would that be a fair
That'd be
summary?
a fair statement. In fact, as you and I have both studied both professionally and in these other avenues, we've come to understand more about what we call the ego,
Right.
and how religion itself is not insulated from the effects of ego.
Right. And the ego, as defined by the Course, would be really the compilation of all the messages and beliefs and stories that get installed into us by not only our parents, but by society, by the culture we live in, by the times we live in, by other people, teachers, other people of importance to us in our families and beyond.
And the thing that I, mostly think of when I think of the ego and how to distinguish it, it comes from a basis of fear. It comes
Yes.
from a basis of limits, and which is the basis of the fear itself. And so that's kind of the way I think of the ego as its cornerstone.
And you contrast that to the basic message that Helen received, and that was, well, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes.
Because it's already accomplished.
Yes.
You're on this earth, and you're here in time and in space to learn lessons.
Yes. And being created in the image of God, the essence of who we are, what we are, is that infinite perfection of love implied by that. And so that allows us to appreciate, to experience, to understand that we are of an infinite source. We are of an abundant source. And so
But fear blocks
all these
us.
ideas of separation, all these ideas of limits create this fear and creates the confusion that we suffer with.
Yeah. The course is rich. It is divided up. It's actually several books in one. There's a text. There's a workbook for students. There's a manual for teachers, as well as a couple of supplements.
Yes.
One on psychotherapy, as a matter of fact.
That was one of the ways that got me kind of started with this.
Maybe next time you come back, we'll
Okay.
focus on those supplements.
I like that idea.
That might be a fun thing to do. Okay, so we started then talking the last time you were here, roughly a month ago or so, about what this A Course in Miracles, and it is really its message is a message of basically love and forgiveness.
Absolutely.
And
that is at its essence what it is.
What it is, love and forgiveness. And so we began to look at A Course in Miracles contrasted and compared to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes.
And, of course, just to summarize where we've already been, step one was we admitted that we are powerless over alcohol. You could also fill in the blank to anything else that you may feel powerless over, and that our lives had become unmanageable. Second step is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore our sanity. Step three is we make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. Step four is we make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step five is we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human the exact nature of our wrongs. And step six, we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character, bringing us to step seven, which is
humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And, one of the things I want to emphasize and stress there is that we are asking him to remove it. So one of the most important things, one of the most important lessons of all of this is, here again, we're getting our ego out of the way, that we're not going to make things happen. We allow things to happen. And so we're not going to.
Boy, we try to for it. Well, we that's a hard one, ain't it?
That's kind of why we're here with that confusion.
You mean that I can't make this relationship work? You mean that I can't make, my boss like me? You mean that I can't make?
Since we're telling jokes here today, one of my favorite jokes is, how to make God laugh. Make plans.
Yeah. Tell him your plans. I think there's a country and western song like that.
Lord. So are you saying, Gary, are you in essence saying let go and let God?
That's exactly what we're saying.
And that really is a lot of the message.
That's a mantra of AA.
And it's a mantra of A Course in Miracles too, isn't
Absolutely.
So why do we have to ask him to remove our shortcomings? Why didn't he just make us without the shortcomings?
it? Ooh.
Remember that saying, seek and ye shall receive. And so it's all available as long as you allow yourself to want it, as long as you allow yourself to desire it.
You got it. You got to want it. We'll be back.
Seems to take the longest time. I just keep thinking.
And welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living here on 1017 FM and 710 KEEL PLPC. Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Our life strategist today is clinical social worker Gary Tiemann, the author of Miraculous Psychotherapy, Achieve Your Ultimate Happiness with A Course in Miracles. Now, you can find Miraculous Psychotherapy wherever you buy books. Amazon.com would be a good place. You can also go to GaryTiemann.com. You were saying before break, Carla, that why can't we just let God do it?
Well, yeah, the seventh step is that we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings.
Yeah.
So my question to Gary was, why, if He is such a loving, magnanimous God, why doesn't He create us without those shortcomings?
The complication is that love requires free will, and so love is antithetical to the concept of coercion, and so to be free, you also have to have the freedom of choice that goes along with that. And so it's part of our evolutionary process to be in our spiritual evolutionary process to come to the realization we want to be the love, we want to be the goodwill, we want to be the compassion and the patience that God is, and that we want to be that ourselves. And so it's available to us, but we have to want it.
So the gift is given.
Yes.
We just have to go pick it up.
Yes.
Got to receive
Yes.
it, huh?
Well, I think of a time that a story that I heard about that being something like, if I'm going to give, let's say I'm going to give one of my girls a piece of furniture, an antique piece of furniture in my house, and I'm going to say, okay, this belongs to Meg. Well, it's Meg's, even though she hasn't come to get it yet.
Right.
And I can walk by it and I could go, oh, that's Meg's rocking chair. That's Meg's rocking chair, until Meg comes to pick up the chair. It's up to Meg to come and pick it up.
Yes.
Is that, am I,
You're on the right
did I
track.
oversimplify that?
No, I don't know if you can, but that's exactly what we're getting at.
I think it's a good analogy. Yeah.
So does that step require action, or is it just the action of asking?
It's the action of asking. It's
actually the action of surrender, isn't
it's
it?
the thought
The
of
thought,
it, actually.
yeah.
It's not even the action. The action is a consequence of the thought. It all happens with the thought. You know, I often talk about how the Buddhists summarize all suffering is in the mind, and when you learn how to think clearly, all suffering ends. And they truly mean that. They literally mean that. And so when we learn how to think clearly, our thoughts are what motivate all of our actions. You know, there's that concept of thought, word, and deed, you know, but it all starts with thought. And then we put it into words, and then we put it into action. But it all starts with thought. So learning how to think clearly, learning how to want and own the essence of this image of God that we were created in is essentially what the lessons all come down to.
Step 8 and 9 are certainly related to each other. Step 8 is I make a list of all the persons that I've harmed, and I become willing to make amends. I become willing to make amends to all of them. Step 9 is I make direct amends to these people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or harm them or do harm to others in some way.
Yeah. Well, and as you pointed out before, forgiveness is kind of the key. And sometimes I like to talk about where even the concept, the word of sin came from. And I know we've talked about that.
Yeah.
But sin originally was terminology associated with archery. And in archery, you either hit the bullseye or you sin. And so once again, going back to the ideas we were talking about earlier, we were created in the image of God, and all the perfection, all the infinite perfection of love that implies. And so when we are reflecting that in our thoughts, word, and deed, we are being true to who and what we really are. Anytime we are reflecting something other than that, then that is a sin. And so, and any time there is a sin, what is the most loving, compassionate response to that? And to say it simply, it's forgiveness. And so if you just get in the practice of love and forgiveness, that will bring you back to the singularity of love that is your true essence. And so, you know, one of the things I love about the 12 steps, it's this very practical application of some of these principles that, you know, most people that are in the beginning of getting sober, they don't know what these things mean. They're not thinking about these things this deeply. They're only wanting to find a way to get out of the hole that they've dug for themselves. And so AA is this very practical, straightforward, hands-on kind of start doing this, and it's training them how to think and behave in these spiritual ways that they don't even consciously realize themselves. You know, we tell them to keep coming back. You don't have to understand it yet.
Just keep on coming back.
But
Keep
so,
doing
but
it.
the steps in these steps, I mean, it is about forgiveness, but it's not us forgiving; it's asking for forgiveness. And I am making a list of people I have harmed, and I'm asking for their forgiveness.
Right. Here we are taking these things that we have owned as our mistakes,
Right.
and we are putting into practice the practice of owning and pursuing the process of forgiveness. And so on the surface it looks like it's the other person that's going to forgive us, but in fact it's us learning how to think clearly about forgiveness for ourselves. And like some of these other things we've been talking about, the more we put these thoughts into word and deed, the more impactful the thought of it is.
So what I think I hear you saying is that we are learning to forgive ourselves.
Yes. And we're using in our business of psychology and psychotherapy, we know all about projection. And so these people that we have harmed, you know, and I think you understand as well, that's kind of in our practice, you can't harm someone without at some level harming yourself.
Right.
And it's so we get into these projection games.
What you do unto others, you do to yourself.
Absolutely. And in these steps, these making amends steps, we're starting to put into action a correction of our thinking process, and we think we're seeking forgiveness from outside, but we're really building forgiveness within ourselves.
In the AA program, there's a I guess a terminology that we use called making a living amends.
Yes.
And that is for, there are people I have harmed that I can't go back. I can't pay any money back to. I can't, replace anything I may have taken or stolen. I've hurt them. I've betrayed a trust, so to speak. So when I'm talking about making a living amends, that seems really close to what you're saying, because
Absolutely.
that's basically I'm changing a behavior.
And that's why in this step it's even specifically identified, all things considered, what's the most loving thing to do? If making amends to someone ends up being more hurtful to them than helpful, you're not going in the right direction here. And so
you got to check your ego, because it may be an ego thing for you to go make amends. So you got to check your ego, even
in the process
even
of
in the
forgiveness.
process of forgiveness.
Yes.
So practically that means if Gary doesn't need to say, "Hey David, I slept with your wife," if David doesn't know, and it's going to hurt David
Right.
when they've been married 10 years after that happened,
Right.
and just for you telling him that is going to hurt him more than just letting it go on.
Hurt him and hurt the
Well,
marriage.
you hear people say, "Well, I just need to be honest." Well, sometimes, going back to what you said, that's really helping you feel good about yourself, but you're going to hurt someone
But you're
else.
going to stir up a lot of stuff along the way. Yeah.
That's touchy. That's
In my book, I like to point out, and David's heard me say this over and over again, how life by its very nature is an irreconcilable thing, and in this dimension. And one of the things I'm getting at there, because on one hand, everyone agrees we want to be honest.
right.
And then on the other hand, everyone agrees we want to be loving. But there's times when those two things even don't reconcile.
They conflict. Yeah.
I use the joke here again. We're telling jokes tonight. When your wife asks you if she looks fat in her new dress, are you going to be honest or are you going to be loving? And so we have to do those games. And once again, it's more important to be clear about the intent behind what you do than what you actually do.
Oh, so it's your heart.
Yes. Yes, that makes the difference.
So that's why when they talked about the Pharisees, they did nice things. They said long, elaborate prayers. They did all the right things, but they did them with the wrong heart.
Yeah, and
Yes.
he talked about you're like the sepulchres, all white on the outside, but full of bones, rotting bones on the inside. Yeah, yeah.
So, yes, once again, it's having authentic, clean thinking behind what you do. What is the motivation? It's not what you do, it's what is the motivation. And with the right motivation, you can turn it over to God, and He'll take care of the rest.
Step 9 is to make those direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure those people. And then step 10 is continuing to take this moral inventory and promptly admit when we find ourselves wrong.
Yes. We want to get in the practice of being able to not only think this way, but practice these things that we think. And it takes vigilance. In AA, they talk about the addict mind is cunning, baffling, powerful, and seductive. And I expand that to the ego mind is cunning, baffling, powerful, and seductive. And if we're not vigilant, it will suck us into its delusions quite easily without our vigilance to protect against that.
So I got to learn to watch that thing.
Yes.
How do I do that?
Well, one of the tricks that AA uses is that you have other people around you, and you have people that you can talk to that
Like a
will,
sponsor?
yes, that will call BS when you get into the BS.
That's why I like group therapy.
Yeah.
Because they will call
They
BS
they
on
will
each
call
other.
BS on you very quickly, and maybe even sometimes on the therapist.
Not this
never,
therapist.
never. We're with Gary Tiemann today, the author of Miraculous Psychotherapy. Find it wherever you buy books. Find it at Amazon.com. Find him at GaryTiemann.com. We'll be back as we move through the 12 steps today and how they relate to A Course in Miracles with Gary. We'll be back.
Watching for the snow.
Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living here on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and clinical social worker Gary Tiemann, the author of Miraculous Psychotherapy. So you're always saying there's no such thing as coincidence, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so Sunday I run to Strawn's to pick up lunch. And I ran in, I got my lunch, I'm coming out, and this guy doesn't see me. He's in an SUV, and he backs right into me. And it's not pretty. He gets out, and he's all upset. Nice guy. But he
good.
introduced himself. I introduced myself. He said, "You're on the radio." I said, "Well, yeah, thank you." And so we, but everything was fine. He gives me his, insurance.
He's well insured.
It's fine. It's fine. He gives me his insurance information. He's upset, so he gives me the wrong insurance. He calls me later in the day and gives me the right one. And I didn't get around to call him yesterday. So today, these people reach out at lunchtime. I didn't have anything to eat in the refrigerator at the office. I said, I'm going to go down to Kroger and I'm going to get some lunch meat, and that'll give me my sandwich or lunch for today, and they'll give me some stuff for the rest of the week. So I'm getting back into the car at Kroger at lunch. The phone rings. It's his insurance company. And she, says, "Is this a good time?" And sure, but it's a good time. So I'm pulling out, and I'm pulling out of the Kroger. I'm still in the Kroger parking lot, and I'm pulling out, and I see this car headed straight for me, and I see the driver has her eyes closed.
Oh my goodness!
Bam!
Again,
I'm on the phone with the insurance company from Sunday, and this young lady gets out.
You're in the twilight zone.
Yeah, what the heck? and the lady on the phone, we of course she says, "Oh my goodness," and like we terminated our conversation. She called me later in the day, and she said, "I wanted to, I wanted to laugh, but I didn't want to." Upset you further. She said, "I heard the bang."
A witness of sorts.
But you're always saying there's no coincidence. So what's the universe trying to tell me? Stay out of Kroger parking lot, or
You're eating too many groceries.
maybe I'm eating too. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, we could spin that one in lots of different ways, but I hope if we stick to the simple things of forgiveness and compassion and gratefulness, that will get you through it.
I hope I'm going to trust that you're right, Gary. Okay, so we're going through the 12 steps of AA, and we are to step we're to step 11 now, right?
Yes.
So we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of God and the will of God for us, and for the power to carry that out.
That here again, it's such a practical application of teaching people how to become more spiritual in their awareness of themselves and in their everyday living. That learning how to recognize this ego aspect of ourselves and to surrender this ego, and using some of the terminology I'm using right now. Not everyone's going to get that, and
right.
Particularly someone that is fresh in sobriety. And so they need some basic tools that will get them connected to learning how to live in a more spiritual way.
Right.
And it's real important here that we emphasize God as we understood him. It can't be this rote thing that they learn from someone else. It has to be authentic and something that resonates within them, that lets them know.
The kingdom of God is within you.
Yes. Yes.
Not up there, out there, over there, but within you.
It's not, saying some kind of words in so many kinds of ways that's going to do it. It's about the experience of connecting with this higher power more than it is trying to put it into words.
Yeah.
Is this step saying that we shouldn't pray for things? Like I shouldn't pray for healing of a loved one, or I shouldn't pray for to get that new job,
Or that new Mercedes.
or that or that new house?
Well, it's I have to confront that. If you think you know what's best for you instead of God, that gets a little bit arrogant. And
You're probably in your ego then, you're saying.
probably in your ego. And there's nothing wrong with owning and acknowledging that there's this part of me that would like that. But if we get too attached to these worldly satisfactions, that's going to take us away from our source and take us more into our ego. And the ego, once again, is by its very nature limits. And so learning how to surrender, how about praying, and this gets a little simplistic, just praying for God's will be done instead of what you think that will should be. Now, if you really appreciate that that aspect, God, nature, truth, the God of your understanding, however you want to think of it, or whatever semantics you want to use, is coming from a place of abundance. Abundance beyond your comprehension. Our minds here are inflicted, if you want to use that, with the ego, which we think in terms of limits, and it's really difficult for us to imagine no limits. But our source is of an infinite source. There are no limits. There is abundance beyond our comprehension. And so you can bring your plans to the table if you want, but your plans really have more limits to it than what you consciously realize.
So you're saying if I'm praying for job A, that might be so much smaller than
Absolutely.
the career plans that God has for me.
Or if
Absolutely.
I'm praying for the healing of this relationship, or for that relationship to come into my life, I may fall far short.
And we can even get into the whole concept of prayer. Once again, it all starts with thought. And most of us have learned about prayer, and it's called a prayer petition. But just like in our psychotherapy training, we're cautioned to, and particularly in my hypnosis training, we're cautioned to not suggest a negative. In other words, if I suggest, do not think of a pink elephant. The first thing we do, we think of the pink elephant.
Yeah.
And so with a prayer petition, if we're thinking in terms of, in one aspect of it, we're thinking, I don't have.
Lacking.
Yes. And so we're perpetuating that very thing in our experience. And so learning how to get our egos out of the way, learning how to get our inbred ways of thinking about such things out of the way, and surrender to the mind that knows no limits, I guarantee that will take you farther than you can even imagine for yourself.
Clinical social worker Gary Tiemann, the author of Miraculous Psychotherapy, available at Amazon.com. Gary is our life strategist this evening on Strategies for Living. We're moving through the 12 steps of AA as it relates to A Course in Miracles. We'll be back.
And it's breaking my heart you're leaving. Baby, I'm grieving. But if you wanna leave.
Welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM, 710 KEEL. Welcome back into another edition of Strategies for Living. POPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. It's always a pleasure to have Gary Tiemann as our life strategist. He's the author of Miraculous Psychotherapy, Achieving Your Ultimate Happiness with A Course in Miracles. You can find it at GaryTiemann.com. That's TIEMANN. GaryTiemann.com. You can find it on Amazon, Amazon.com. And step 12, Gary, talking about the 12 steps of AA as it relates to A Course in Miracles. So we've had this spiritual awakening as a result of these other 11 steps, and we're trying to carry this message to others, to alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
And so here, and I need to say, we're only skimming over some of these ideas, and I hope I'm teasing people enough to want to invest more in understanding what the Course has to say and how it applies to the 12 steps, because they really are on the same page.
And the richness of the 12 steps themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And including in step 12 here, we're talking about, you're beginning to own your being part of the community.
Right.
You've
awakened, supposedly, from these 11 steps. Now go forth and help wake up others.
And participate and know that they are all your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Since we're telling jokes here tonight, one of my old standbys that I know what did the Dalai Lama say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. And so...
Bump.
Yes. And so, when you are becoming awakened, you're becoming aware of we are all brothers and sisters, and being part of our community, whatever our community is part of owning who we are.
Yeah.
You can't separate that.
And that's at our community, even that the ego tries to limit. It makes it smaller. Your joke is indicating, make me one with everything. My community is the all. It's everything.
Yes.
You can't limit it, and yet our egos do our best.
And so in step 12, in this AA community, these brothers and sisters that are in front of you, own them as your brothers and sisters. They are you and you are them.
And they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some people that are doing step 12 work early on, they're a little bit confused about, it's charity work, or particularly it's sponsees instead of sponsors. Sponsors have worked through this and they're in a place they understand it, but sponsees often are asking, that would be such a burden for me to ask them, or something like that.
Right.
When in fact, they're doing them a favor. The more that we can participate in the community, the more that we can own we are brothers and sisters on both sides of the equation, the more you're contributing to the sponsor's sobriety as well.
Right.
It's a gift.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Miraculous Psychotherapy is the name of the book. Gary Tiemann is the author. Achieving Your Ultimate Happiness with A Course in Miracles. You can go to GaryTiemann.com and you can order the book Miraculous Psychotherapy or A Course in Miracles from Amazon.com. Yes. And I hope you will. Looking forward to the next time you come, we'll do one of the supplements of A Course in Miracles.
I can't wait.
Psychotherapy. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here to talk about this
Thank
stuff.
you always for coming. Look forward to every time you come back.
Every time he leaves us, I want to go home with him and just ask him questions all night long.
I'll send you home with him tonight. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, folks, for tuning into Strategies. We've been brought to you by CADA, by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Resilient House. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call that you could make, who would you call? What would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Gary Tiemann, for PLPC Carla McCormick, for Ruben Wright, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you next time on Strategies for Living.